Hi, welcome to our podcast, VIK, and this new special episode. I'm so excited and so happy to have today a very special guest. So I will introduce him. Colin Hay, how are you?
I'm very good. The pleasure is mutual. It's nice to be with you.
Colin is the drink business Bordeaux correspondent professor of political science in Paris, leading the voice in the study of wine markets and their evolution, and a voice of experience about wine. Thank you, Colin, to be with us today and to have this conversation about wine, terroirs, vintage, and the market. Will be a way to show, to the audience your impression, your side, because normally everybody knows about the wineries, the winemakers, and so on. But your vision, that will be something very unique. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure. As you say, I kind of combine a love for wines like yours with an analysis of the market conditions. My day job is a professor of political science and political economy, so I study the market conditions. And the market conditions have become more, not less important to the selling of these wines, and it's good to have a chance to talk about that with you.
Thank you so much. So let's start to talk about the recent vintage 2022, the one that we released in general. For Chile was a little bit tricky in terms that there was the sensation that it was a very hot year or some of the warmest years. But I have here the numbers to compare with the 22, and then we can talk about it. For example, the average temperature in Celsius, the minimum and the maximum. The minimum was the 21 was 69, 69, and then 22, 63. But the maximum for the 21 was 20.3, and for the 22, 19.6. Then the 22 is considered the second very dry year in the last 100 years. The 22 is the 23rd. The 21 was considered the warmest in the last 10 years, and the deficit in the last 100 years was the second. And the 22, in terms of the temperature, is considered the coolest in the last 10 years. And in terms of the rain deficit, is the 13th. The 21 was cool during the winter, but the 22 was cool during the winter, the spring, medium cooler in the summer, and also medium in the autumn. So in terms of the number, this is from the National Registration of Chile for the weather forecast. It was a little bit cooler, but the sensation it's a little bit that is the opposite. So probably you taste wine from the 21 and the 22. What's your impression about this vintage?
Well, I love this vintage, and I love the 21 before it, in fact. And I think the quality of both wines says a lot about the quality of your winemaking and your care and attention in the vineyard that the quality of the wine reflects, actually. This 22 vintage, I love. It's kind of interesting for me because I think it's only the second vintage which is majority Cabernet Franc for VIK.
Yes, it is.
And it's close to 80%. I think 79% Cabernet Franc, the rest Cabernet Sauvignon. That's interesting for me as a Bordeaux lover. First, I love Cabernet Franc as a varietal. It makes me think of Pomerol. It makes me think of Saint-Emilion. The wine which from France, from Bordeaux, which is closest to this in composition, is probably a wine like Le Dôme from Saint-Emilion with 80% Cabernet Franc. Or, of course, the rest there is Merlot, not Cabernet Sauvignon. But what's interesting about this, particularly the 22 vintage, is this is a Cabernet wine. but it's also richer and fuller in its Cabernet Franc character than one would find, I think, with equivalent wines from Bordeaux, actually. One thinks of the high percentage Cabernet Franc wines, and there aren't that many, actually, as a little thinner and more slender than this. So what we have is something which is very rich, but also very refined, very classically. I mean, there's a sort of Bordeaux character about it. And that's interesting too for me, because I know you yourself spent a lot of time in Bordeaux under the influence of people like Paul Pontellier at Margaux, the influence of Valerville, Poifferet, and Le Croc and things. There are plenty of things that speak to my palate in this wine that speak Bordeaux. But at the same time, I'm struck by the density and concentration of the Cabernet Franc in this, which is unusual for a Bordeaux lover like me, and I particularly love. So this is a very, very fine, very refined wine, beautiful tannins, very long, very dark fruited, lots of graphite in this, but also a hint of the cedar that will come through with greater aging, I think. It's a lovely wine. It's accessible already, but it's a wine that you can happily hold for a very, very long time, and it will reward patient cellaring.
Wow, thank you. I have no words. I love that description of the wine. We have been working so hard in order to get this quality and this elegant and refined tannins. So I would like to go inside of what you said, this deepness and structure of the wine. Do you feel that it is coming from the tannins, for example? When you see that it has this kind of Bordeaux relationship or related to that, even that we are in Chile, we don't pretend to be Bordeaux wine. We want to be elegant, as you said, or refined.
Yes.
Millahue has his own personality, and we work really hard about that. But it's more about the structure and the tannins and the finesse of the tannins that give you that impression.
It is very much. I'm really struck by the quality of the tannins in a wine which, from Cabernet Franc, has this much intensity, depth, and concentration. The difficulty with Cabernet Franc is often it's a varietal that you have to be careful not to get overly ripe.
Yes.
And in Bordeaux, it ripens quite quickly at the end. But at the same time, there's another danger, which is that if it's not fully ripe, then you have that kind of pyrazine, kind of green tinge. And indeed, a lot of Bordeaux properties which have quite a high proportion of Cabernet Franc are now in the habit of picking it just à point, as they would say, just on the limit. And actually, what I love about this is that it has absolutely none of those green tinges, but it has the quality of tannic extraction, which indicates a very full phenolic ripeness, which is difficult to achieve with Cabernet Franc. The other thing I think which is very important here, and I think it's a technical achievement on your part, is to extract those tannins so gently that they remain really spherical, really granular. This is very soft in the mouth at the start. The tannins are really only sort of present on the tongue towards the end, and they remain very spherical. And that's a super achievement, I think, actually. And it makes one think in a way that there's a higher percentage of Cabernet Sauvignon in this than there actually is, because you're getting the same kind of quality of tannin that we typically associate in Bordeaux with Cabernet Sauvignon. You're managing to extract that from the Cabernet Franc, and that's very rare indeed. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Well, I will get into those two description that you said now. One is the how we work in the fields, and the other about the tannins and the extraction of those beautiful and very refined and ripe without having that green hint. And I have something that, and I don't know how to call it in English, maybe an anecdote, or it's something that happens to me when I was in Bordeaux working in Chateau Margaux with Monsieur Pontellier. you know that he was an amazing winemaker, but also a person, and he loves to teach. And he was very important for me because I learned a lot of concept from him that we introduce in our wines. One is that you make wine first in the fields, and you have to take care about the tannins there. And the à point for us is like when we have that kind of tannins that you lose the angles, and it's still, you have tension, you lose that kind of the edge, but still you feel the tannins moving. And that is something that we have been working very hard the last 2 years, the 21 and the 22, in two ways. One, it's in the fields. So we work during the year, during the spring and the beginning of the summer, to get this ripeness very, very early in the season, with the green harvest, just one bunch per grain, but also we worked in the arm of the vine to take out the leaf around the bunch without taking the big ones outside in order to block the sun, but let the light getting in. So the light, it's a good sign for the tannins to ripe without being burned with the sun. So we can keep the flavor, the aromas, the acidity, but the tannins, they ripe, they continue working, and when I hear your description, that yes, we are doing it the right way, and then something that I learned from him that it's still in my mind, and I always tell this to the young generation that work with us, that you have to be very careful when the grapes arrive to the winery. What is important now, it's obviously the selection at the moment of the crash pad, only the best berries getting in. And we can talk about that then. But this is the example that he gave me. And then you have to be careful about the pump over, how to extract the tannin. So he gave me an example that I never forgot, which is, imagine, Cristián, he's like that. Imagine, Cristián, you have 2 cups of tea with hot water. And you put a bag of tea in one, the same bag of tea in the other one, but with one, you are hurry up. You need to go. So what do? You take the bag in and out, you put it on the spoon, you press it, and then in and out, and you extract very fast the flavor. And the other one, you just let the flavor go off, very normal and no intervention. So which one will be more bitter? And I was like, at that time, 2026 or something like that, a few years ago. and I said, well, of course, the first one, like you peg it in and out, and then you put pressure on that will be more bitter. Okay, with the pump overs is the same thing. You have to extract very gentle, just a little bit. So what we do, we divide the volume that we want to go through the skins like by 6, and we do 6 pump overs, very short, very to extract just the one that they are ready to go out. Normally, the ones that are ready to go out are the ones that they are ripe, and they don't need, to délestage, for example. You don't need to take all the wine out, let the skin goes down, and then put it back because you over extract. This is something that we do, and when I hear your description, I say, oh well, this is working. But that's very, very important for us during I
think that's absolutely right. There's lots of things that I really admire in that. I mean, firstly, let me also join in paying homage to Paul Pontellier, because I think he's one of the very, very important people in the evolution of Bordeaux winemaking. And both, as you say, in the vineyard and in the process of vinification, which comes afterwards. And Chateau Margaux still works today very much in the same vein. He is who they think of when they make the wine to a large extent. And Philippe Basco is very much a continuation of that kind of tradition. This is top quality winemaking, and it is only by doing that Bordeaux could have made the progress that it's made in recent vintages. And it's lovely to see the same techniques and same approach present here. It produces different effects because your terroir is different, the hang time of the grapes on the vines is different, but it's essentially the application of the same principles. It's about ensuring that the tannins are as ripe as possible without the fruit being overripe and without the alcohol being elevated.
Yes.
And then it's about a moderated extraction, which doesn't throw the tea bag around in the cup, but as gently as possible allows the tannins to extract without pushing the tannins out of the skins and saturating the wine with tannin. And that's what we get here. The effect of that for someone tasting a wine like this is that they can drink this wine in its youth already. This is a highly accessible wine, which is a great, great pleasure to taste now. Okay, I'm used to drinking and tasting young wines, so I'm probably more used to that than most people. But I think most people would be surprised that a wine which has the aging potential of 30 or 40 years is so accessible in terms of its tannic presence in its youth. And that's modern winemaking, but it's very skilled and very careful winemaking. And it's about care and attention in both the vineyard and in the winemaking facility itself. I mean, you're also lucky in a sense in that the investment in the winemaking facility also allows that.
Yep.
It's not something that all Bordeaux properties have the capacity to do. It's not something that all properties have the capacity to do. It's not easy. It's not cheap to do, but it's reflected in the quality of this wine, which is exceptional.
Yes, I agree with you. It's like that. We at the winery do a lot of efforts. The first part is that 80% in the way that we make the wine is in the fields in order of all those works, and we take care about every detail to ripe the tannins. Imagine that we are ripening the tannins 1 month before the first VIK wines that we made years ago. For example, the 13, that one we start the vintage at that time in the middle of March. Let's say 15. Now we start the 15th of February, and because we are looking to lose the angle, but the fruit and the acidity natural, and that gives vibration to this wine, that gives movement, that gives this tension, dynamism. And then at the winery, we do a big effort during the selection. Imagine that we take out, without considering the stems, like 10% in terms of berries that we don't like, small ones or big ones. So we reject a lot of different grapes in order to get just the perfect one. And then in our circular winemaking, you know that from the 21st, the 21 and the 22 are the first big wines that they are 100% made with our circular winemaking, which is everything is from the property. So we made the barrels at the winery. We toasted with our own oak trees, so we are giving the flavor of this terroir from 300 years ago. The amphoras that we use are made with our own clay. So if the clay, there's a discussion about this, but if the clay give a flavor or transmit something, will be our own flavor. Then we harvest flowers to bring wild yeast from the property, not only the ones on the bunch. So there's a big effort in details. That's part of our philosophy, holism. We define holism as our philosophy in terms that the whole is more than the sum of each part. So that means that we take care in different levels. We get into details in every single level to reach the goal, which is the wine. And something very important that you mentioned also here is that the wine is very drinkable. You have an experience. You normally taste en primeur, right?
Yes.
So you have that experience, which is very, very, very difficult to have. That you can taste a very young wine with 1 year, and you have the vision to see that wine how will evolve in the time. And so when you mentioned that this is a wine that you can keep it for a long time, but it's amazing how the tannins are ready. probably today is still young, but in 5 years will be maybe in the peak or something like that. But it's amazing that the tannins are drinkable, and something very important for us and for me as a winemaker here is that the wine has to be an experience. And what makes me happy, and for the team is the same thing, is that when people finish the bottle, that means that they love the wine. So that doesn't make any sense when you have a big wine or a very elegant wine, but it's not drinkable. You one glass and then you're done. The good thing is when the wine get open, you start your glass, and then you have a conversation with a friend, with the family, or just alone, and then the second glass the wine change, and you have another flavor, another sensation, and third glass another thing, and finally the wine tells you a story. That's for us is super important, but because we want to be an experience, we want everybody to enjoy the wine. And
I think that's absolutely right, and I think there's maybe a couple of secrets to that too. The drinkability of this kind of wine. This kind of wine. The first thing I think is its freshness. I mean, it has perfect full phenolic ripeness, but never at the expense of the natural freshness. And that means that the fruit is very pure, and it's quite a complex fruit profile too. Actually, I mean, this has been in my glass now for half an hour or so, and a great variety of rather different but very picture perfectly pure fruits have presented themselves, from raspberries to blueberries, which you think of very much in Cabernet Franc, but actually this Cabernet Franc probably lends itself more towards, or presents itself more in terms of kind of black cherries and even darker fruits than blueberry. Actually, Bordeaux Pomerol Cabernet Franc is often blueberries. This isn't as much that. So there's a great diversity, and there's lovely cassis notes and lovely sort of mulberries and brambles and things like that. All of these very fresh, and that's I think very important. And the other thing is, right on the finish of this wine, when the tannins start to engage, when you notice the granularity of the tannins, they kind of release a juicy sapidity, which is really refreshing to the palate, and means this is a wine in its youth and as it ages that will go fantastically well with food because of that freshness and that release of freshness right on the end. So I think those are very important things. And what I would say, yes, you're right. I taste a lot. I do the en primeur tastings. And the en primeur tastings are very discriminating, because at the top end, when you're talking about your Chateau Margaux, you have something similar to this. The quality of the tannins, that drinkability that comes in its youth, which is new. It wouldn't have been there 10 or 15 years ago. I've been doing this long enough to remember doing en primeur campaigns where your mouth is just dry with raw tannins. For wines which will age beautifully, now you don't have to go through that sufferance in the en primeur tastings at the top end, because the wines are like this. They're accessible in their use.
Yeah. Well, Philippe Pascal is with one of the very important in terms of the Bordeaux wines, and he has an amazing experience. We are very good friends. The last time that I visit Margaux, I called him just to tell you an anecdote, and I called him and I sent him an email. I said, I'll be in Bordeaux, presenting our wine in La Place and all that, and come here and we have lunch together. Okay, So I went there and arrived, and I went to his office. But he was already at the entrance, so he said, "Hey, Cristián, I didn't tell anybody that you will come here. So before to go, why don't you go into the winery?" So I went into the chai, and I start to walk, and I heard, "Hey, Chilean, qu'est-ce que tu fais ici? Hey, Chilean, what are you doing here, man?" And all these guys that I worked with them 2003, so it's like 20 years ago, and still remember all the time that we spent together, and it was very funny. And but I learned a lot there. And one thing that Philippe Pascal is really special, because at that time he was it was Monsieur Pontalier and then Philippe. He's so
Yes.
about details. And this is something that
Yes.
I learned from him. He's so about details, the different levels of the press. This part of the wine, the first part of that you write after the fermentation has to go to these barrels in this, and then so detailed. So that he's really one of the big guys in terms to get this new kind of expression in the wine, and that's something that is very remarkable about his winemaking. He's so good. Yeah.
I very much agree. I mean, Margaux as a property is fantastic to visit, and there is that sense of that transmission of a knowledge and an understanding which was shared between Pontalier and Bascol, and is now shared by the younger members of the team too, and will be transmitted into the future. And it's, I mean, I always think I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to taste in these properties. I treat the opportunity a bit like you. I think when you were there as an education, I learned so much, and it helps me appreciate and write about the wine to try and understand what the property is trying to do. I think it's a responsibility of those of us who have the privilege of tasting these wines to understand what the philosophy of the property is, and to try and communicate that, and to try and explain, if you like, why the wine tastes the way in which it does. I mean, maybe it's my academic side, but I kind of almost want a bit of an explanation for what it is that I'm tasting. And it makes sense here. Everything we've talked about is the application of some science, some skill, some technique, the transmission of that, and the application of that in the vineyard and then in the shade to produce a wine. It's not by chance. It's by design.
Yes, well, I totally agree. In fact, it's what we do here. You know that we planted our vineyard after a big research about the different soils to find the rootstock that we have. We are the only 100% rootstock in Chile, which is weird because Chile doesn't need any rootstock. But for me, it's really important for the moment of the harvest, because it's more about what we want and not what the chance that you have if you don't have it. Let's say, very simple, in one row, when you don't have rootstock, maybe those vines that they are one side of the row and the other vines of the other side, they don't ripe at the same time. So this is green, this is ripe when you harvest. When this is overripe and this is ripe, or when this is ripe and this is a little bit green. So you have to choose something in the middle. But when you have rootstocks, the genetic get more balanced, and then they ripe very, very close. They're still different because the genetic is the genetic, but they're very close. So it's more about our decision where we want our tannins. It's not about let's try to balance this. So it's super important, that part. And then that gives you let's say the tannins that you're looking for. What we're talking about now, those tannins without the edge, that juicy flavor, and then how you struck that in the winery. I'm very curious. As winemakers, we have that chance to taste the wine since the very, very beginning, to taste the grapes and to see the evolution and to take a decision for the future, which is what happens with you when you taste the imprimeur. That experience that you have there, you can have the vision for the future. That's super unique, and that I think takes you more close of what we do in terms of when we take decision is what we will pass in the future, and that's what you're seeing when you taste so young wines. And something important from what you say, and this is what our vision too, is that. We studied, we did research, we studied the place, then we choose the varieties depending on the microclimate. Those hills that they face south, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, those hills that they face north, Carmener or Syrah, because they resist more the sun. The sun in the south hemisphere runs through the north, so they face the southern faces more than the north faces. So everything was not by the chance, was with the studies, research. So science has been a very important column for us. And the terroir where we are is so special. And when I hear from you that you want to know about the terroir to understand the wine, that's a very a beautiful approach, because you finally can understand the wine very deep. The next time, if we have the chance to have you here, I would love to go into the fields and to show you the different soils, and to go deep in what we are doing in the fields, and of course in our circular winemaking. For example, the barrel. So in terms of that, when you taste this wine, and I hear your description, it's about fruit, the blackberries, that part of sensation. There's no tannins from the oak, and this one has been 26 months, but we get a different toasting. We have more than 68 different toasting for this wine. Very, very light, because we don't want coffee, chocolate, mocha flavors. They are totally out of this. It's more about the structure and the microoxygenation and the expression of the fruit. And when I hear your description, it's more about that than the other. So, what's your sensation about the time in barrels for these wines? Just to have
your use of oak is exactly how I believe oak should be used. As you say yourself, it's for micro-oxidation more than anything else. And the combination of that with Amphora 2 is a signal of your desire to retain the purity of the fruit in the wine as much as possible, to prepare it for its long aging, that it has the capacity to do because of the acidity and because of the tannic structure of the wine. The oak is there to kind of help it on its way. It's very subtle, and it's one of the things that I like most about particularly these last two vintages, that you could ask yourself the question, would this wine be different without the oak? And it would be, but you don't taste the oak directly, and I think that's very, very important. And that's exactly the right approach. I think for me, that's what I think the leading Bordeaux properties are also trying to do in their way too, and I very, very much respect that choice. We've talked a fair bit about Chateau Margaux, but Margaux as an appellation has also returned in a way to its terroir.
Yes.
The wines of Margaux speak of their terroir, and they do so because they're much less dominated by the influence of the oak on the taste of the wine in its youth, above all, than used to be the case. And that for me is a wonderful thing. And again, Paul Pontellier was inspirational in that kind of move, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Totally agree, and totally true. When I was there, I worked with the tonnelier at that time, Alain. Well, Alain already he's à la retraite. He's retired now, but and it's very curious because I didn't know that, but when I was working with him, he said that he has a picture, very important picture, and I said, which one it is? So when you go to the Larousse wine dictionary and you go to Chateau Margaux, and they have there a tonnelier, like with the hammer like this, and it's him, Alain. So that was so funny. So I spent some time with him working with the barrels and the toasting and all that. And before we start with our barroir concept, barrel and terroir, I thought that I knew about barrels. And as a winemaker, we know that you have to dry the oak 36 months. You know how they do it with a chimney or different type of how to dry where they come from, Alière, Tronchet, Nevers, or Vertrange. Or the toasting, but there's a lot more things. When we get into this, imagine that we didn't know how to do it. We started in 2018. We make the 25% of the barrels at that time. The 19th we did the 50%. The 20 we did 75%, and the 21 was the first one that we made 100% our barrels, 900 barrels, and well, I have to tell you that the first 100. We make some mistake, we didn't.
I'm sure it's impossible not to.
Yes. So but we learned a lot, and it was funny because those first 100, they're still in the winery, and we have the numbers, and then we know exactly where they are. But we imagine that we went to France to learn about this, about the pourers, how do you make barrels, and how do you make the toasting, and then they come here. Jean-Luc Sylvain helped us with this, and so I'm very grateful about him. His knowledge. He came and helped me and the team to understand how to make barrels, and he teaches that profession, which is millenary. I mean, years they learned it from his father from his father, and he teaches. And once we start to make barrel, we understood that this is an art. And every single thing that you do during the process, or when you create the barrels, I prefer to say that, it will be a flavor. And once we did these 100 barrels with some mistakes, and we understood that, for example, we don't want those kind of smoky flavors, there was some things that they teach us that we change it. And now it's not just about where the oak come from. We, for example, for our Cabernet Franc, we have a special forest here, like Bertrange, La Forêt Blanche, Bosch. Also a little bit more from the north, the one that they use as for Burgundy wines. It's how we toast it, how we avoid the coffee, the chocolate, the mocha flavors, the smoke. So, for example, just one little thing. When they teach us to seal the whole of the bone, you know that you put an iron red, very hot, and you burn a little bit that to seal it, because you want the wine or the oxygen going through the stave, and then the gas going out as water or alcohol through the stave. But you don't want the wine to move this way in the stave. So that's why you seal it. So they teach us to seal this when you have both faces on. So where the smoke goes, the smoke stays in the barrel. So when we saw that, we said, we don't want this. So we do it, but we take out the faces so the smoke can go off, and we don't have that kind of smoky flavor. So there's just little details that we have been doing, and today we have our own method, our own, let's say, formula, and it's amazing. It's a beautiful world.
It's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's a difficult thing to contemplate when you first decide that you're going to essentially make your own the wood to age the wine. That's a very, very big decision. And as you say, it's impossible to do it without learning how to do it over a certain period of time. But once you've achieved that, you then have a degree of control over the aging of the wine that allows you to match the wood profile for the varietal, for the varietal in its terroir context as well, and to do something which is very, very difficult otherwise to achieve. So I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. It's quite a brave thing to do. But I mean, the evidence is here. Particularly these last two vintages, which are entirely aged in your own oak, are fabulous. And the use of oak contributes to how good they are. So yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Well, that kind of decisions that come from the family. You know, Alex and Kerry, they are entrepreneurs, so they take the risk. Alex, you know, he takes the risks. They are not afraid. Obviously, it has to be a good idea. Obviously, the numbers has to be good, because this is also, you know. So every time that we have a new idea, we present that, and they go like, yeah, let's do it. It's like Stonebig, you know, like Stonebig, it was a concept which is totally different. We start with this circular wine making, and then we decide to go like, why don't we do a circular wine? A wine that we won't age this wine in the winery where we control the temperature, the humidity. We will let the nature to be aware about the wine, to protect the wine. And they said, let's do it. And the same thing with Barrard. And when we present this project, and they go like, well, this is a beautiful idea, let's do it. We'll take time, you know, but they give us that chance to go for it. And today we are the only ones in South America. and the only ones in the world toasting the wine with the oak with our own oak trees. So we are giving the flavor of the place to the barrels. Because if you imagine that we make the fire with eucalyptus, for example, what will be the flavor of the barrel? Minty, right? Well, when you use your own oak from the property, in some way, you are giving this flavor from 300 years ago. So that's something that very unique from them, that they give us that chance to look for new, they push us, let's do it, let's do it. I mean, let's find something new. And that's something that we love from them, because they are very open to let us work in a different way. You remember that at the beginning when we started, we were the crazy guys, no, this is 10,000 plants per hectare in Chile. Why? You don't need that. That's for Bordeaux. Yeah. Well, we were the first one with that kind of density. 100% rootstocks. You're spending money, man. So we were the crazy guys, but now it's here. That the wine is talking about it. But we were that's not the way. We were breaking some rules. We were doing everything in a different way. And today, I have to tell you, today we have a new toasting. We will use our rocks to toast the barrels. So we will have a new toast. It's already at the winery. So the next time you come, we will see that. It's amazing. Yes, it's true that when you really take decisions that they are different and that gives you a good result, it's really very important. Well, let's talk about the market and your sensation, your experience. We already talked about the tasting and the imprimeur and your visit in France. Next time I would like to go with you to taste some great wines. So if it's possible, that I'll be very happy to just there. I won't say anything. I just be tasting the wines, and I don't make noise. You just taste the wine. But let's talk about the market now. You have an amazing experience, and you have to write about it. So what's the sensation today for you? What's the winery have to do to make this market a little bit more dynamic? Because this last year has been very difficult for some wineries and in general, let's say. So from your vision, what's what the winery has to do?
You're right. The market conditions have been difficult now, probably for 18 months. They've not really become any easier. That impacted very negatively the En Primeur campaign that we've just been talking about. The wines were good. They were probably better than was anticipated. And the prices were good too, typically reductions in price of 30% or so, which were 30%. Ostensibly quite well received by the trade, because the trade needed transactions, needed to sell things, and therefore was looking for something which it could suggest was a good deal. So all the conditions were in place for a campaign that might work, and it didn't really work very well at all. I'm a bit more optimistic, however, about the September releases, the autumn campaign, the release of the non-Bordeaux wines on La Place de Bordeaux. And the reason for that is because I think it's a different kind of a campaign, and it works in a different kind of a way. And some of those differences are important here. So one of the problems, the problem with the market conditions at the moment is that there is not very much demand.
Yeah.
And the demand that there is reticent. It's held back. There's potential demand maybe, but it's not all invested in a way. And so the problem, and that creates a big problem for En Primeur, because En Primeur sees an awful lot of wine come to the market at a particular moment. If you think about, we talked a little bit earlier about Pomerol.
Yep.
Pomerol 2024, probably the En Primeur campaign probably saw 2 million bottles from the appellation of Pomerol alone brought to the market. Now, not an awful lot of that sold through, and that's because the supply exceeded the demand, because all of that supply comes to the market at the same time. Yep. If you think about the September releases, then the first thing that you notice is that the volumes are tiny in comparison. we're maybe talking about a few 100,000 bottles, not millions of bottles. And also the second factor is that these wines are very diverse. You've got wines coming to La Place at the same time, yes, but from 15 or so different wine regions in 5 continents. And that means that they're accessing bits of demand around the globe, which it's not the same source of demand. There is a certain amount of demand for young Pomerol. But if you bring 2 million bottles of young Pomerol to the market at the same point in time, that's a much more difficult proposition. The person who's thinking about buying VIK when it's released is not necessarily the person who's going to be buying German Riesling or Barolo or Massetto or Opus One, Napa Caps, whatever it might be. There's a great diversity there in the offer, and that means that there's a lot more potential demand for the relatively small quantities that are there. And the final point, too, is that the wines which are offered through La Place in September in the autumn releases are a very limited number of very high quality international wines, which have been selected by La Place and as such probably have a higher level of demand for them than is the case for many other wines which come through La Place at other points in the year. Put all of those factors together, and also now with a little bit more clarity about tariffs, new tariff for the US economy as well. And I think we can probably expect the campaign, which is in the process of starting really this week, we can expect it to be, I think, more successful than on Primeur. And I think the market will start to move upwards from this point. It's very difficult to say. It's far too early to say on the basis of the couple of wines which have been released thus far. But I'm quietly confident.
Oh, that's great to hear that there's a light to see on the horizon, right? Great. Well, it's something that we have to work on. And in terms of the people, the young generation, how we can work to introduce them to the wine, because wine is a culture, right? So when you start with this wine, and then you have to have that kind of intention to move to another one, to taste another one, to learn from this terroir, and then move to another one to learn about the other terroir. How we increase the culture of wine? You have what's your feeling about it?
I think it's firstly, I think that's exactly the right question, and we need to pose that question and continue to pose that question until we're satisfied that we have good answers, and those good answers are generating results. My feeling there is that some wine regions have advantages over other wine regions, and Bordeaux has a bit of a disadvantage, actually. Bordeaux is seen typically and above all by the young as something their parents might have drunk, something their grandparents might have drunk. It's seen as a group of wines with a certain kind of mystique, but also maybe a little bit outdated. Now, I'm not saying that's a very accurate description, but it means that Bordeaux needs to change its image and needs to go out and attract and persuade a younger generation of consumers not to be put off by its historic reputation. I think in doing that, Bordeaux can look to properties like your own that I think are very effective in the kind of communication around the wine, the identity of the wine, the place of the wine in a place, in an environment, in an ecosystem, the respect for that ecosystem, the respect for biodiversity, the respect, as you put it, expressed in the circular and holistic winemaking.
Yes.
I think these are all things which appeal to a younger generation of consumers. And thank you for doing that, because I think that makes it more likely that younger generation of potential consumers will then buy other wines as well, as they pick up a taste for this and understand the quality of what they're tasting and understand where that comes from. There's sometimes a view that we shouldn't talk about things like terroir. We shouldn't talk about place. We shouldn't make it too complicated.
Yes.
We should try and simplify things. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. I think the younger generation of potential consumers, when they buy products like coffee, for instance, are often very interested in why what they taste tastes differently from something else they could buy and where that comes from. And I think we offer them, we should go out and try to offer them an explanation for that in a way.
Yeah.
And I think in that sense, we say they're important to us. We try and explain what it is that we like about these wines, and we try and educate them in that appreciation. And I think we will find a very receptive audience if we do that. And I think you're already doing that. There are a bunch of other properties around the world which are doing that too. And I think Bordeaux now is beginning to realize that it needs to start to do that. And there are some Bordeaux properties which are well on the way to doing that too. So again, I'm quietly optimistic about that. It's
Great, it's true. I agree. We need to continue to show the wine as it is, with the terroir, the different places, and it's not complicated. When you get into, you're right. You want to know more, and and you give a beautiful explanation with the coffee. So the wine, the way is how we tell them the story to get into this, and the way is to show them that we are taking care about nature, that we do this in a very no intervention way. We do regenerative agriculture, and they want to hear about these new things that they want to know. You are doing a wine very respectful with nature, and you are not using chemicals. You are doing biodynamic or organic. It's not. This wine is super natural, and the sulfur is low, and there's no intervention. Wild yeast, no intervention, no findings, no addings, no filtration. We work organic in the fields. We use the concept of the lifetime, like biodynamic. We don't use some concept like the horn of the cow, but it's the life, the time in life. How we, the moon, for example, in Stonebeek, it's super important, the equinox or the solstice. So they want to know that you're using that you involve nature, that these wines are supernatural. So it's the way that you tell them the story. But they need to know about the different terroirs. Millau is different from Colchagua, from Maipo, Bordeaux. Margaux is different from Pauillac. It's different from Saint Julien. But that's the point. Okay, so tell me. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's very, very important, and I think it's also important for our understanding of agriculture too, more generally. Wine production is a form of agriculture.
Yes.
Wine production is typically being thought of, less so today, but typically being thought of as a relatively lucrative form of agriculture. And that has allowed a kind of respect for the environment in situ, which makes wine potentially a model for other forms of agriculture too. And I think if we can encourage the young to understand what properties like you are doing to respect the biodiversity and the ecosystem in which the vineyard is located, then that generation will also generate an expectation that other forms of agriculture should also be doing their bit to ensure that that is the case too.
Yes.
And I think that's an exciting kind of a proposition in which wine can actually help us reform our agricultural production in a way that makes it more environmentally sustainable than it would otherwise be. We have to be careful about that because, of course, generally speaking, a bottle of wine is a relatively expensive commodity in comparison to some of the other commodities which are produced in and through agricultural practices.
Yes.
But at the same time, that gives us an opportunity to showcase, to experiment, to show what can be done, and that it produces something which is commercially viable, but also environmentally sustainable.
Yes, totally agree. Well, Colin, thank you so much. Has been an amazing conversation. Probably we can stay longer. We have more issues.
We could empty the bottle while we were discussing.
Yes. And I'll be happy to do that. But we already have the time, and has been a very, very nice conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Very interesting. Next time you come to Chile, you have friends here, so we're waiting for you. And
absolutely, and we'll do a little bit of on-premier together as well too.
Well, that will be fantastic. That will be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'll be in contact with you. That for me will be very, very, very nice. So thank you so much again for your time. Thank you to everybody to be with us in this episode. Very, very exciting and interesting conversation. Colin, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.